Well, ladies and gentlemen, and guests from around the world, welcome to this webinar from RUSI in London. Today we're running a webinar on reflections on VJ Day, Victory over Japan Day, the 75th anniversary of the final end of the Second World War. And we wanted to run a session that reflects on the relationship between the United Kingdom and Japan at the end of the war, but also in the 75 years that have passed since. You know, 75th anniversaries are always a very interesting one in a way because they're the most poignant. The 75th anniversary is the one after which an event passes effectively from living memory. After the 75th anniversary, it goes into history in a more formal sense. And that's why I think it's a very good time to try to reflect on the perspective, the historical perspective we might put on an event. And indeed, the perspective of thinking about the Second World War, and my goodness, we've thought about it so much in Britain over the last 50 odd years. The perspective we might put on the Second World War is that we didn't emerge from it, nobody emerges from it with anything other than regret and relief and moral compromises. But I think, you know, as Max Hastings made the point in his magisterial book about the Second World War, he said, for the hundreds of millions who lived through that trauma from 1939 to 1945, and even in the case of East Asia from 1931 or 1937 to 1945, for those hundreds of millions of people, the best that we can probably say is that history would have been worse if the Axis powers had achieved their ambitions. And so the important thing is to look forward, to think about what has changed. Changes began immediately, of course. Decolonization pressures around the world, but not least in East Asia, were absolutely immediate. So too was the continuing atrocity of 300,000 Japanese armed service personnel who died in Soviet camps, who were captured in Manchuria. It was a dreadful time in general, but the world got through it, and Japanese-United Kingdom relations developed in a very interesting way and have developed a pace in the last 20 years, particularly in the last 10 years,